has played his hand so cruel. There ain't nothing I can do. You say you lost your love for me, my love for you. Sit and cry, say goodbye, sing this sad, sad song. You can bring me flowers, baby, when I'm dead and gone.
Welcome to Poetry Night at SoulFood Books. Thank you all for coming. It's going to be a really terrific night. We have a couple of wonderful female poets who are just going to knock your socks off, I guarantee. I'm going to tell you about their official biographies and then say a little something personal. Belle Randall attended the University of California at Berkeley, where the poet Tom Gunn was her freshman English teacher. Wow, that's something. A decade later, she was awarded the Wallace Stegner Fellowship for poetry at Stanford, where she completed her first full-length collection of poems, 101 Different Ways of Playing Solitaire, published in 1973 by the University of Pittsburgh Press. Her poems and essays have appeared in numerous journals, including Poetry, Threepenny Review, Tri-Quarterly, and PN Review. From 2005 to 2007, she received an NEA, a National Endowment for the Arts grant, which is huge. She is retired from teaching at Cornish College of Arts and the University of Washington, and she's taught other places too. But she continues her work as a poet and as an editor of Common Knowledge, the Duke University Press Journal. And reading with her tonight is Anita K. Boyle. She's an illustrator and graphic designer who has spent her lifetime as a dedicated denizen of the Pacific Northwest. During a Willard R. Espy Foundation residency in 2003, she wrote 60 poems. That's pretty amazing. I don't know anybody that can do that. And still had time for small talk with a coyote. Boyle is the author of the chapbook, Bamboo Equals Loon, Egress Studio Press. Her poems have appeared in literary magazines including Stringtown, The Raven Chronicles, Crab Creek Review, Cranky, Indiana Review, Spoon River, Mudlark, Margin, Mirror Northwest, and in the anthologies including The Red Sky Morning and Saints of Hysteria. She lives near an inspiring pond outside Bellingham with her poet friend partner, lunatic, that's my word, poet friend partner, lunatic James Bertolino, who has collaborated with her on several collections of poetry, and I think those are here today. And she runs Egress Studio Press, which is a short jog from her house, where she can be found happily doing the same new things every day. So that is the official biography of our two wonderful poets. And I wanted to say that I have had the privilege of knowing Anita Boyle for a few years and of being a publisher of her newest collection, What the Alder Told Me, at Moonpath Press. She is not only a phenomenal poet of the Northwest and beyond, but she is a phenomenal human being. She is someone who lives her life in a very ethical and lovely way, and I just appreciate the person that she is and the poet that she is, and it's such a delight to have her here. I'm so excited to bring her up on stage. So please welcome Anita Boyle.
don't know where she gets that stuff. I don't know. Evening pond. I sat at the pond until the frogs' discourse ended. The dark recesses of willows emptied into the water. Bats began flying their paths to nowhere. Inside my ears, the roaring finally stopped. Okay. A diversion. Between here and the trees, there is a tower. It is filled with canaries, yellow, some of them singing. They are like paintings with infinitesimal feathers that sometimes float down. Say the morning is overcast. Drizzle restrains the sun. The tree line details itself through filtered light. There is the scent of bacon on the wind and the sound of spoon against mug. A child is missing. Are you hungry? Things pass behind stone walls. There's a statue of horse and soldier, the rasp of rusted gate, a garden of gladioli and lupins. You're it. This is a child's game, but you are old. Put your arms up. Turn around. Are you afraid right now? Or are you standing in praise of the field? Who exactly do you think you are? I want to say thank you for inviting me again tonight. That's just really nice to be able to read with Belle Randall here at SoulFood and to be invited and by Michael and Lana. And especially to have my book published by Moonpath Press, Lana's press from Kingston. It's still pretty amazing to have a book like you can hold in your hand from Lana's press. It's pretty nice. Okay, cowshed. This is spelled cowshed with the ED on the end. The cowshed out back is like a grandfather who's had a working life. Every year, structure diminishes, but desire continues like a daily chore. Springtime, and the nests in the rafters overflow. The gray boards of the old barn are rotten at the bottom and let in little animals who stay the night, breathing the dark like Holsteins. The barn lists to the side, an arc. The sight of rust on the roof of the old cowshed makes me happy. I don't know why. The color, like madrona bark or autumn leaves, runs down in corrugated rivers, smooth and slow as silt. This next poem is dedicated to Isaac. He's my son, and he's using a hammer right now. So it's called This Nail. In an old barn out back, I found this nail. The barn is used only for storage now. This nail is about 2 inches long, small for a nail, but not tiny, and it's galvanized, though rusty at the tip. This nail is straight and unused. The rust rubs off and just colors whatever it touches, makes a mess that won't clean up easy. The surface of this nail is gray and rough. There is no grid-like pattern to the head, though I thought there was at first. The grid keeps a nail from slipping so it can be driven straight. The potential for doing what this nail was made for has not diminished over time, but sitting in an old shed in the backwoods decreases its chances so much that I'd be surprised if this nail were ever used. I could sure use a few nails like this, not so big they'd split the wood, not so small as to be useless. If it were sunk into some solid siding on the barn, it would do an excellent job of keeping out the wind and varmints. This nail, and about 50 others of the same age and shape, are filling a can labeled Sir Walter Raleigh Tobacco, next to 4 dozen other cans just like it, except they've been useless since the day they were emptied. This can, at least, has a purpose. Then there's this nail. The next poem is called Decline. The wind blows lazy insects in the sun like dust. A quick gust stiffens the trees, teaches them to brace for winter. The songbird scolds from tangles of brush. I want this day to be done. A new wisdom comes. Eelgrass lengthens as the tide goes. In the distance, a seagull lurches past a flock of scaup. A turquoise airplane interrupts. A breath of Dunlin missed the beach. Wings white, then gray, then white. The slow drain of the bay calms the wind. Water no longer licks the rocks. It forages beneath the grass instead. Birds walk their silhouettes. When a heron settles nearby, I know things will go smoothly. But it leaves too soon, complaining. It hates me enough to take me out of its line of vision. This long-legged day ends with the sucking sound of the bay going down. The underfed sun sets red. And those poems were written down in Oysterville, and this is written up where I live, Whatcom Lyric. A chaos of autumn brush surrounding a small pond offers up a yellow willow whose leaves drip slowly onto the surface. And I don't know. This is October at Willapa Bay. A ragged wind beats the surf at high tide. Solitude grows somber as the day turns on. The sky sinks low and washes out the line of horizon. Then 8 salmon dead on the beach. Their spines twist through sand like kelp. Bones picked by gulls, eye sockets empty, each mouth agape, clearly amazed they made it this far. Let's see. This is the idea. It has an epigraph from Theodore Roethke. What does what it should do needs nothing more. The birds have moved on. A drought has taken the pond. Fish push mud through the assembly line of their gills. Autumn arrives. At the edge of the forest, there was an idea, a sparkle in dew. Corruption brought it to fruition, and it now lives eating fungi beside a clear stream. A grove of alders beside the cracked pond is half lit with sun, half shadow, a vertical chaos of branches clutched by underbrush. An old woman goes out to the mailbox. This is the privilege of her soul, to breathe heavily on a short walk. She asks nothing more. A dog down the road won't stop barking. An airplane prowls the sky. The wind storms by, hushing them both. But that's not true. They quiet on their own. The wind storms by. Small communities of mushrooms grow here. Cattail fluff blows like bugs in sunlight. Something new lives nearby and thrives like red. This next poem is about a cat I had named Nutmeg. It's called Under Scrutiny. She was a calico cat. Under scrutiny. My cat stares at me in the dark all night long. I know this because when I wake from some dream or need, I see the glitter of moon shattered in her eyes. Why does she turn away? I've seen her in the daytime dangling those little mice and baby birds. One might suspect she brings presents to me, but I know her intent is to horrify. She's successful. She leaves them laying in the pathways or sits where I can see her chewing their tiny heads. This morning, when I woke to the globe of her eye, I waited to see how long she'd stare. 2 seconds. Then she closed them, but not quite tight. I kept watching until she turned her head and flattened her ears. What was that about? So, Jim and I write collaborative poetry now, but I wrote this poem the day I met him. He was teaching a workshop. It's called Padilla Bay, and it's a pantoum. But I need a glass of water. Padilla Bay. I knew why I came before I arrived, to see the estuary, to hear Padilla, Padilla, Padija, to be blessed under the shadow of an eagle. Today I will write beautiful poetry. To see the estuary, to hear Padilla, Padilla, Padija, to understand that wrack does not always go with ruin. Today I am beautifully poetic as I step carefully across the slough. One must understand wrack does not always go with ruin, and certain plants here have learned to grow tolerant of salt. Watch out for them as you step carefully across the slough. Someone said the wheat flowers have a wonderful scent. While looking at the plants that grow tolerant of salt, keep in mind that water's memory remains immortal. Rumors, non-existent flowers don't have any sort of a scent, but a hand-dug dike needs a pile-driven stockade to keep the tides at bay. My mind is watered down with a dismissal of mortality, though I've been blessed under the shadow of an eagle. Both the hand-dug dike and the pile-driven stockade have not kept the tides at bay. Remember, I knew why I came before I arrived. But writing collaborative poetry is kind of is the reason why I write poetry like this. It's called Just Back from Vacation. Yellow carnations in the blue glass have wilted, terribly sad. There are large spiders who've hung themselves in the windows. I see you've separated the kitchen from the living room with duct tape. I would like to know why. The blanket has devoured the couch and is just now eating the coffee table. I want to go home, but it's too late. I returned hours ago. I have 3 more poems I'm going to read. Card game. This one has a epigraph from Robert Bly. We write poems with lies in them, but they help a little. We went outside to watch the clothes blow on the line. There are hundreds of blackbirds sitting along the tiers of telephone wires. Back inside, we quenched our thirst and ate potato chips. We get bored and go out again, where the laundry billows in the wind, dry at last. The birds are gone. Gary Snyder stands there, holding a spatula, screaming a pack of lies. We reshuffle the deck. We love Mr. Snyder. Okay, so 2 more poems. This is Whenever the Sun, Whenever the North Wind, Whenever the sun shines cold, Whenever the argument turns back and bites, when autumn bleeds yellow, whenever the murky clouds are so low, time quits. What the heck? Whenever the naked willow draws inky lines on the sky, when the father, and why does the pond flood just then? Whenever the wind chafes for more, whenever the house shudders and darkens, why then, and why so cold? Whenever the children quarrel, when the gray grass cracks, when the absent father, and why not? Whenever the squall pounds the house, whenever the moon gives in, whenever the windows ice over, when the father and the wind together. And this distance. What's distance to me? Even birds in flight need no assistance. Butterflies. I need a space with light, a few trees. I'm no judge of anything. The earth sings with ease. Frogs sound throughout the night. I've wandered here a while. I've all the music I need. This is not a disgrace. I've planted the willows on the first island of the lake. If the red-winged blackbird means yes, I agree. And then I wanted to say some stuff about Belle Randall. The first time I met her, that I recall anyway, was the day she got her NEA grant, and she rode up to Bellingham to read The Poet as Art at the Lucia Douglas Gallery. I just think it was a really good idea that Belle had a ride from Bart that day, because it was just she got a phone call from Dana Gioia that morning, and she was just glowing, sort of like she's doing now. And was really excited to read with her at Village Books Tour earlier this year. I couldn't believe she said yes. So I'm happy to be here with her. Thank you.
There? Of course, I'm pleased to be invited here. Thank you, and thank everybody for treating me so well. Thank Lana for giving me a ride, and Anita for the beautiful roses, and much more than that. Lana mentioned to me driving up that they like us to say something particular. In fact, I did invite Anita to read with me, and about, why I had done that. And I remember I said something like, oh, I was just thinking about that today when I was getting my poems ready. And it's true that a very short poem that's part of a sequence I'll read later, as I was practicing, sort of, I had said, that's what Anita knows. So I won't read it now because it is part of a sequence, but I'll read the sequence later and I'll tell you when we get to that poem. I guess I'd like to begin by reading a very frivolous, silly poem that I wrote with my daughter when she was in the 8th grade. This will, kind of establish where I think the intellectual bar should be set. Wings and rings. I usually order French fries, but today I ordered rings. The crust keeps pulling off the onion. How do you eat these things? I ordered supersize, imagining a lasso for Paul Bunyan, but these are not much bigger than an ordinary onion. Please pass the napkins, thanks. These onion rings are greasy. I could eat a ton of them, but that might make me queasy. Thump the bottle bottom till the ketchup goes kersplat. Anything deep fried can really make you fat. Thump the bottle bottom till the ketchup goes kerplooey. And pass the napkins, please. My hands are real gooey. I only like the crunchy part. It's the same with chicken wings. I'm going to say, please hold the onion next time I order rings. My husband Joe is sitting over there, and he remembers. I think we haven't talked about it for years, but a lifetime ago, when I was reading in New York City, we met a poet from Russia. And it turned out we were told that he had quite a following, and I mean, actually literally a following, like people sold their possessions and followed him. And it was explained to us that in Russia, this was a certain kind of poet, was also a holy man, and people believed in what they said. And this poet, remember Joe? He said, poems should be, you should write poems that a dog can understand. So I don't think I often do that, but I might have one, and it's called To Love a Golden Retriever. Beautiful muse, here you are again. How desirable you are, desirable beyond measure. You make me want to lie on my back, clutching the grass, clutching and kneading the gnarly roots, the nappy, rough carpet of earth, giving my body up completely to the sun. Oh, let your rough tongue lick my eyelids open. I feel your warm nose snuffling and nuzzling between my shoulder and ear. You are the one I loved without doubting. It was enough just to be with you, smelly and friendly and near. And this is my most recent poem. It's dedicated to Jacques Tati because it was inspired, if it is, by something he said in an interview that we watched. We recently rented a DVD of his very prescient film, Traffic. I think it was made in '71. But at any rate, this was in part a memory he had of school days. The corner chair. Through tangled bangs and lashes, bad boy peeked around. Behind the teacher's back, in view of everyone, the chair in which he found himself was perfect for class clown. Umbrellas and galoshes choked the cloakroom door. The students bent over their workbooks. The chalk lay in its furrow. The gathering minutes in spasms jerked off on the hands of the clock. Her shoulders shook with laughter, but Mary made nary a sound. Almost balletic the way Mr. Baggy Pants spun around, demanding to know who did it, spraying his spittle on those, reciting by rote at tables times tables they wrote in rows. Like Anita. And I guess I associated that schoolroom scene. Eventually a classroom appears. It doesn't happen till the last two stanzas of this poem, but it's called The Fool's Gold Mouthpiece. From the gold glitter megaphone mouth of mammon neon blah 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 along the main drag of our lives, where so much of what is ugly in words. To the gold-filled tooth, moistened by the warm, most intimate saliva, a glitter in the guttural, shivering last syllable, slurred by the sexy little swinger pulled lately from Green River. What remains of our remains but a lump of gold amalgam, forensics expert's finger? In the pocket of a car coat hanging in the dark school cloakroom, closed for summer, a pink plastic and wire dental retainer, monitor of lost and found and recognized as having fit into the smile of a boy who'd moved away and who was consequently gone forever. The thingness of that thing, at once so intimate and cold, the soft palate hardened into song. I submitted that poem to Poetry Magazine, and I got back a question from Chris Wyman, the editor. He wanted to know why I thought that it hardened into song. Wouldn't song be softer? And I thought, well, I don't want to spend very much of Chris Wyman's time, so I tried very hard to just give a good answer in a sentence or two. And, you know, I do think feelings are sort of molten and soft and formless, and then to give them this form, you have to harden it. But then my next issue of poetry came in, and it was all questions addressed to poets with, you know, on the facing page, they'd have the poem and then the long page-length answers. I really regretted my brevity at that point. And you recognize, everybody knows what The Fool's Gold Mouthpiece is a quote from. It's torn from the fool's gold mouthpiece, the hollow horn plays wasted words and proves to warn that he not busy being born is busy dying, by Bob Dylan. And so that, I guess, put me in mind of the importance of music and poets that sing and their lyrics. And I didn't know at the time I was picking out what to read tonight, but Jim Bertolino has rather gallantly said that he and I were of the same generation, and he was going to read some things from they wrote way back in the 70s, and I'm going to do him one better and read something that I wrote way back in the 60s. I don't know whether I should tell you this or not. It's the Beatles at Carnegie Hall, 1964, and all this time, my whole lifetime, I never sent it out or read it because Tom Gunn had told me it had too many metaphors. And, you know, now I kind of read it and I kind of like those, so I just thought I'd read it. They contribute to the whole incongruity of the experience. The Beatles at Carnegie Hall, 1964. The night is full of radios. From all points of the city, cars careen toward this car from which you step, and in your step, 6,000 girls collide head on in a single kiss. They love you, Ringo Starr. See how, like ancient women witnessing catastrophe, they weep, they wail, while through their screams your love songs roar like big machines through horror in a factory. Legion and beside themselves, they surge against the stage till they themselves become the sea that comes between themselves and you. They care too much. Their hope is rolling now with such momentum. They do not see these hours until they lie behind them in monumental ruin. The rows of empty seats are vast and still, a moonlit cemetery now. An old man sweeps. Buses, those great beasts of burden, bear the weary forces home. You smiled at them. They could not see. The stage lit up their faces like a fire. It was your music nose. The beat drowned out the melody, and one could hardly hear the poetry, preposterous as all they planned to say in their beds alone last night, dreaming there in sweet cliche. And Tom Gunn, being British, part of the British invasion in my world was kind of my own Beatle. This is a sequence, it's called The New Liturgy, and it's a calendar of short poems. They're really short. Most of them are like haiku, although I think there's one that's a couple of quatrains long. And I guess this will be the last thing I read. January. Love is the song, love is the note, learned by heart, killed by rote. February. Ashen, ashen, empty day, my mother in the kitchen, monthly female pain, my father at the window, restless thoughts again, discontent, the world blurs like ink beneath the rain. March. Beneath my black umbrella, waiting for a train, 3 pansies by the platform, blinded by the rain. I thought when I was reading these today, well, it shows I'm from the Northwest because there's so much rain. April, still. Rain among the rushes by the river, where the meat of earth has aged, God knows how long. An old professor and 6 schoolgirls gather, lilies shaped like trumpets in their arms. May. Plum trees laden with blossoms, girls making chains out of flowers. How heavily they bear the fragrance, the boughs. June. Nettles. 36 hours after accidentally touching them, you waken in the dark and feel again on your bare skin at ankle and at wrist the numbing sting, indistinguishable from the real thing. July. Now I know why we harden our hearts. To be sincere is to be a gutted fish crying, "Oh, Mama, I wish," into the night. August. As wine from grapes for ages aged, from bleeding comes the word to bless. And all the sweetest fruit and best is heaped at harvest by the press. The waste of life, the precious waste, that we may learn the taste of things, who in the shining cup behold rising flames, angels' wings. And September is the poem that I told you when I, glanced at it this afternoon. I thought, that's what Anita knows. So, Anita, here's what you know. September. The bird who sings at the window is the bird who sings at the end of the world and the dawn of eternity. October. Autumn and the leaves on fire. This is the other spring, this blaze of embers breaking open, change. November. Into my childish ear belief hissed superstitiously. Into my nursery crept the dreaded tooth fairy. How cheap his bargain seemed at first, real coin, authentic to the bite. But lately he has taken my hair, my sight, my life. December. Tell the child, honor thy father and mother. Tell the father and mother, be like the little child. Plant the tree beside the water. Nail the notice to the tree. Make the rich man think it's costly. Let the beggar know it's free.
Thank you so much. We're going to take a brief break and then come back with the open mic. But during the break, I'd like you to please speak with our featured poets, and please take a look at these absolutely brilliant books that they have on the table, modestly priced, a bargain to take home these poems. So please have a look at the books. They'll be happy to sign them for you. Shop the store, get some lovely beverages and food, and we'll see you back in 10 or so for the open mic. And to the break with some applause for Anita K. Boyle and the wonderful Belle Randall. let's get back to our seats and settle in for the open mic. We have some readers signed up, and there's still time to sign up if you haven't. Tonight's question on the open mic, we always have a question because it kind of introduces us to each other in a friendly way. And tonight's question on the open mic is, what are your favorite ways to relax? And I noticed that people have answered this question with a varying degree of seriousness, perhaps, and humor. I think one of my favorite ways to relax is to look out over the sound every so often and get back to a good book and stare out over the sound and get back to a good book. Kind of the combination of beautiful surroundings and beautiful words. So we're going to read 3 to 4 minutes for the open mic. So kind of do it that way in your head if you can. Michael will throw up his arms in anger if you go over, right? Right, Michael? Oh, he'll throw water on you if you go over. Okay. We haven't done that before. Something new in 5 years. Great. And if this is your first time at our particular open mic, please let us know because we give you extra cheers. So we'd like to give you a nice cheer when you get up here. Our first reader of the evening is infamous and has been mentioned a couple times tonight. He is somebody whose favorite way to relax is apparently to drink frogs. So please welcome to our open mic, Jim Bertolino.
The cool thing about drinking frogs is they make that wonderful noise. And I could teach you something that you could pass on to your families. Have you ever done any nose popping? Check it out, it works. Well, I'm delighted to get to read a few poems following Belle and Anita. And since Belle read a poem that she wrote in the 60s, I will open with a poem that I read for the first time at a reading against the Vietnam War in Portland in 1967, I think it was. Or was it 68? I can't remember. The red dress. The whir of the sewing machine. Her back bent, beautiful in the tension of her toil. The purr of my thread between her fingers brings her to me, brings us, weaves me in the house of her. And nowhere is there stronger, more soft fabric than this. And then, this I'm reading from my new and selected poems, which was published a little early in my career, 1978, but it collected poems from a number of books that I had published in the 70s, and I will give you a short selection that will take less than 4 minutes. Thank you. Elegy in 3 parts. Old Growly died this year. They pushed his rotten wood trailer over the rim of the dump where he presided as long as I can remember. The men took Squeaks, his grim little dog, away too. 2. A bent woman who itched her chin on her knee as she walked and slept on the cold courthouse steps, except in winter. I don't know where she slept then. Doesn't feed the pigeons anymore, and they've flown to the park where musty old men attempt to fool them with cigar butts. 3. A green Mack truck with no trailer bore down upon a preoccupied wren, and before the feathers had settled, 3 sparrows and the rest of the wrens were singing again. This next poem is entitled Day of Change. My name is Junebug. I feel splitting bamboo when the wind hits. My legs cannot smooth to the flight of birds. I want soon for this chamber to pass. I need the length of the snake. I have seen so much. The Coons. A 4-year-old girl drowned today in the pond. Her mother fell on the bank, pounding the greasy water with her fists. The mud specks made her tears run brown off her chin when 2 old men and the paper boy took her home to the trailer. You watched from our window. When I came back from the liquor store, you said, "We can't drink gin tonight." I told you how, coming round a curve, suddenly a raccoon mother and 5 little ones, I locked the brakes and slid, watching as one by one, quickening their pace just slightly, they came into view to the right of the fender, up the ditch a few feet, and turned to sit in a row, all 6 of them smiling. And then I'll finish with a poem called The Pleasure. I am the sand dollar. I touched your elbow on the beach that evening when dry shore weeds rustled and you learned you loved her. She's left you now, and you stand open like a pomegranate gone to seed. I see these things. I've become a pleasure growing on your arm, and now you've begun to notice. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Appreciate that. Didn't have to throw any water, although I thought about it. I have a couple of announcements I'd like to share before we go on with our next reader. So I've made some extensive notes. Coming up on June 24 is the next reading of the Redmond Association of Spoken Word, and our featured reader is not a poet. RASP features a mix of fiction and poetry writers mostly, but we're having a nonfiction reader this time. That'll be June 24, Mark Waterbury, who's the author of a book about Amanda Knox called The Monster of Perugia. And it should be very interesting, especially with some of the recent developments in that case. I don't know if any of you went to Derby Days here in Redmond last July. If you did anyone go to Derby Days last year? Not, oh, one person, yay. Well, one of the neat things that happened last year is there was a poetry table with a giant wall, where you get a giant magnetic wall for poetry and prizes and typewriter and a bunch of other fun things to do with poetry. And I think that's coming up again. We're going to do something. Mostly Rebecca Meredith, who's the Redmond Poet Laureate, will be running that. And RASP and others will have some presence there, and we hope to be part of that. Derby Days is July 9 and 10 that weekend. And then our next Soul Food reading is July 14, and our featured readers then are Tanya MacDonald and Deja Leger, and they're both haiku poets, and they may read other things as well. And one of the reasons for that, for featuring haiku then, is in anticipation. A couple of weeks after that is the Haiku North America Conference, which is coming to Seattle for the first time in 20 years. And that'll be at the Seattle Center with a banquet at the Space Needle. And ask me if you want more information. Let's see. Okay, I will tell you more information. Go to haikunorthamerica.com. And I also wanted to wave this about. If you haven't seen this, this is a new issue of Cascade, published by the Washington Poets Association, which has been a little dormant for the last year or two, but it's showing signs of life, and this is one of those signs of life. Um, if you haven't, if you're a member or were a member in the last 2 or 3 years, you're entitled to a free copy of this, and there will be some readings and some release parties if you want to get a copy of it. And it contains winners of the poetry contest that the WPA has had over the last 3 years, plus a selection of juried poems by many wonderful Washington State poets. I'm in there, and I think you're in there too. No, not this issue? Okay. Well, there's a fine selection of poets in here, so if you want to take a look at it, just let me know. Okay. To relax, our next poet likes to write poetry. And sometimes that's relaxing to me, but sometimes it's really hard work. But it's nice when it's relaxing. Brendan McBreen.
And if I'm too relaxed, I come on stage and get all nervous. Anyway, another announcement, and I put flyers out on tables, and there's more on the back table. But Auburn Girdle Days is on August 13th and 14th, and we're setting up our poetry open mic contest and features and book fair and all sorts of good stuff. So, just a reminder of that. And I'm going to read 3 poems, and one of them is a bit long because I want to see Michael flailing his arms. Oh, well, that too. Them. They are veins, branching, bisecting out to reach capillary crumbs, or the veins of a leaf, each strand seeking sunlight sustenance. These ants do not seek our sun. Their light is deep within earth. These ants construct temples where they please. These ants are the body and blood of their queen. Weeds. The seed needs only to fall to become a universe. The idea needs only a pen to become a mistake. And what a mistake it could be when it looks so damn good on paper. And I have a feeling I read this too often, but I enjoy reading it, even if it's not a good poem. This is not a good poem. Sorry. This is a bad poem. This poem is mean to puppies. This poem catches flies and puts them in spiders' webs. This poem trips people, glues quarters to the floor, laughs when they try to pick them up. This poem is unruly. It heckles other poems. This poem is not a good role model. This poem drinks, smokes, hangs out in tattoo parlors on the mean side of the tracks. This poem frightens the elderly, laughs at others' misfortune. This is a bad poem. Once, in grade school, this poem beat up that slow kid and took his lunch money. Things have only gone downhill since. This poem is packing. It's a rough neighborhood. This is a rough poem. Sometimes, this poem deals pot and rolls junkies and drunks. A good poem wouldn't do such things. This poem is a loner. No need for influences. Keats, Nash, Kipling, McClure. This poem is self-sufficient. This poem is proud. Someday, this poem will be shot down on the street. But today, no one messes with this poem. This is a bad poem. Thanks.
Thank you. Next up, we have someone who I believe it's her first time at our open mic, so we're going to give her a special cheer. Please welcome someone who relaxes with tea and biscuits. Please welcome Anna.
Hi, I'm Anna. I'm most recently from London, England, and I'm going to read a poem by Shadow. This is an epigraph by Winston Churchill. Now this is not the end. This is not even the beginning of the end. But it is perhaps the end of the beginning. About us. When, at last, it truly can be said, there exists such a beast as us. We shan't, in public, paw the other's privates, undisciplined as tasteless children, prisoners in the thrust of unruly lust. We conform, instead, to the law of our devising, serve portions duly measured, if generous and frequent, rendered more devastating by precision in our strikes. On the town, we stand close, sit closer. But that's near the extent, save shared glances akin to solar flares. Sparks ricochet through rooms, pulses rollick boats at tether. Waves break across rocks, inundate beaches with the incoming tide. Subtle synchronicity forms such focused pressure, the sagacious are moved to mother. Behold, the ravenous poised to devour.
Thank you, Anna. Anna, do you know where Watford is? Watford? That's where I was born. Yes, I hide my accent well. And thank you for coming all the way here. I forgot to mention when I was waving this around that the cover photograph is by Cora Goss-Grubbs, who's lives here in Redmond or nearby, I think. And pardon? Used to be. Yes. Okay, our next reader, well, there's nothing like a good Vicodin and an ale to make our next reader relax. That's Shadowbird.
I want to thank Anna for reading my poem. It's my Churchill poem, so I jumped at the chance to have it rendered in a British voice. I'm going to read one poem by E.E. Cummings, who has been an influence of mine since I was about 16, and for the longest time I thought I had quite a complete collection up until a few days ago when I discovered a whole book of which I did not have of his early work. And anyway, just one of these because it is on the long side. But as I read it, I would invite you to consider. Now, this poem it appeared in manuscript in 1922, so it's pushing 90. And as you hear it, just consider, does this sound old, or does this perhaps sound fresher than almost anything you've heard or read lately? Cleopatra, built like a smooth arrow, or a fleet pillar, is eaten by yesterday. She was a silver tube of wise lust, whose arms and legs, like white squirming pipes wiggle upon the perfumed Roman. Strength, who how furiously plays the hot, sweet, horrible stops of her body. Cleopatra had a body. It was thick, slim, warm, moist, built like an organ, and it loved. He was a Roman. Theirs was a music, sinuous, globular, slippery, intense, witty, huge, and its chords, brittle, eager, eternal, luminous, firmly diminishing, have swoopingly fallen, svelte, sagging, gone into the soaring silence. Put your smallest ear against yesterday, my lady. Hear the purple trumpets blow, horses of gold delicately crouching beneath silver youths. The lean-eyed Caesars, borne neatly through enormous twilight, surrounded by their triumphs, and listen well how the dainty, destroyed hero clamps the hearty, sharp column of Egypt, built like a fleet pillar or a smooth arrow. Cleopatra is eaten by yesterday. Oh, I tell you, out of the minute, incessant was irrevocably emanates a dignity of papyrus-colored faces, superbly limp, the ostensible centuries. Therefore, let us be a little uncouth and amorous in memory of Cleopatra and of Antony, and we will confuse hotly our moreover irrevocable bodies, while the infinite processions move like moths and like boys and like incense and like sunlight and like ships and like young girls and like butterflies and like money and like laughter and like elephants through our single brain in memory of Cleopatra, while easily, tremendously floats in the bright, shouting street of time her nakedness with its blue hair. All is eaten by yesterday. Between the nibbling, timid, teethful hours wilts the stern texture of now. The arrow and the pillar peruse curiously a crumbling flight into the absolute stars. The gods are swallowed. Even Nile, the kind, black, great god. Cleopatra, you are eaten by yesterday. And oh, my lady of ladies, you who move beautifully in the winds of my lust, like a high, troubling ship upon the fragrant, unspeaking, ignorant darkness of new lady, whose kiss is a procession of deep beasts, coming with keen, ridiculous silks, coming with sharp, languid perfumes, coming with the little profound gems and the large laughing stones, a sinuous problem of color floating against the clever deadly heaven. I salute you whose body is Egypt, whose hair is Nile. Put your ear to the ground. There is a music, lady, the noiseless truth of swirling worms is tomorrow.
Thanks, Shadowbird. Always good to hear some Cummings. Next up, we have someone who likes to take 5 or 10 or 15. Please welcome Herb McLeese.
this is about the right distance here. You know, I'm thinking of Bordolino. Is it Bordolino? Bordolino. Bordolino's. Could you help someone adjust this thing so it's about right? Yeah. It sounds okay. Good. Anyway, I was thinking of Bordolino's comment, and it made me think of possibly that he may share something with a great poet of the 19th century, Tennyson. Because didn't Tennyson say something in Ulysses about fear death to feel the frog in my throat? Okay. Two short haikus. They're all short, aren't they? Property listings. Behind the broker's window, a trapped moth. Harvard Yard street sign. Divinity Avenue, private way. And then I have a little longer poem, and then one that I will conclude with. Let's see. I'm sorry about this shaking. The catch. The fisher poet spins his soul into a gossamer line, and then with costly bait casts into a misty sea. On shore he waits to feel a tug, and fearing break plays his line, dancing with the unknown to safely net his most precious catch, two hearts, the reader's and his own. Horace. A candle's flame dies to be reborn, its light a karmic dance. I lost my stepfather years ago, a gentleman and poet. I was there when he died, but did I really know him? What if we could meet again, breaking the rule of time, and fly kites as boys and strive as men? Would we ever true friendship find? To know this man who's gone before, I turn to family and friends, who recalled his open spirit, which in sharing never ends. Bereft, I searched my memory and walked her echoing halls for a sight of him or a voice. Not in here was all. Outside those walls, I sadly roamed in twilight gardens beyond time, till I found a motley throng, and in their midst a fire sublime. I'm lost, I cried. Welcome, friend, a tall man shouted, opening the crowd. Before him stood a brazier holding an opalescent fire, fed by vestal tenders, and my mother, young. For Horace, she sighed. After a silence, an ancient, stirring the coals, inquires, and friend, what bring you? Myself, I replied.
Thank you, Herb. Shadowbird, your reading of Cummings. He's a favorite of mine too, and it's inspired me to pull out this Cummings poem. So I'll read this one. This is a love poem, and Cummings is my favorite love poet. If everything happens that can't be done, and anything righter than books could plan, the stupidest teacher will almost guess. With a run, skip around we go, yes, there's nothing as something as one. One hasn't a why, or because, or although, and buds no better than books don't grow. One's anything old being everything new, with a what which around we come who. One's every anything so. So world is a leaf, so tree is a bough, and birds sing sweeter than books tell how. So here is a way, and so your is a my, with a down up around again fly. Forever was never till now. Now I love you, and you love me, and books are shorter than books can be, and deep in the high that does nothing but fall. With a shout each around we go all. There's somebody calling who's we. We're anything brighter than even the sun. We're everything greater than books might mean. We're every anything more than believe. With a spin, leap, alive, we're alive. We're wonderful, 1 times 1. Edward Estlin Cummings. Mr. Cummings, thanks you. Our next reader likes to relax by meditating, and that is Al Suarez. Welcome, Al. Have you read here before for us? Welcome.
Hi, I'm Al. Actually, first I'll start with one of my old poems. He goes, kites are meant to fly, rocks are meant to fall, am I meant to exist all? A time to mourn, a time to cry, I am ready to die. Now I'll start. Okay. Kites are meant to fly, rocks are meant to fall, am I meant to exist at all? A time to mourn, a time to cry, I am ready to die. And now I'll read a different poem. As I fly like a bird with a broken wing, I start to fall like a kite with no string. For all the times we had are gone because I felt I should be alone. I regret it all. I regret it all up my heart. No, I regret giving up all my heart. My heart misses you. Or actually, wait for what?
Thank you, Al. Next up, a man who relaxes by reading, Gerald McBreen.
Reverence. You see your beauty reflected in my eyes. We cannot hide the longing burning in the chamber of our hearts. Every moment my mind finds a way to love you even more. 10,000 expressions, not enough to spill from the poet's pen. Let me offer just 3 little words. They have changed the world for others. Versifiers cannot improve on them. They are dipped in honey from my lips. Silver moon circles the earth in reverence.
Thank you. Our next reader likes to drive on an open road with no end. John Barry.
Okay, so this is my first time ever doing an open mic of any sort. And apologize me if I seem rude. I'm kind of particular about my name. It's John Berg, for all those who want my autograph or whatever happens. Sounds good. Okay, so I'm just going to kind of go for this. This first poem, it's kind of just a short four-liner that always comes back to me. It's kind of about, things from your past coming back to you and just coming back to bite you in the butt. Just when I wrote it when something really bad came back to me from my past. So it goes, dead ringers never lie. They sit still and wait by. Little does the gravekeeper know what dead ringers have to show. Just something that has been a lot to me. But so this next poem, though, is it's kind of, a little love poem, whatever. It's called The Greatest Invention. I'm the world's greatest genius. My invention is quite convenient. You see, it has to do with a warm embrace, even when I can't see your face. When you're too far away and I'm home alone, if there's something I want to say, I can call you just so you can hear. But if I want to write you a letter and I don't know what address to send it to, I can do something faster and better. I can go and send an email. But this leaves me with a dilemma when I want to give you a hug and you're not right here to receive. There are no sounds to convey across the telephone and no way to send an email to read. This is why I'm the world's greatest inventor. My contraption is one of love so tender. To send a long-distance hug should be free, as is the love between you and me. The inbox is quite close to the heart. It never gets full, and internet isn't required to start. All you do is find someone, or even something. A random person who looks down, or a teddy bear with a frown. Give a big squeeze right close to your heart. Smile to click send, and your distant love should receive this art. This is why I'm a genius indeed. So with this poem, I send with all speed a hug to you through my teddy bear, a hug of love that shows I care. And this one, this last one I wrote to someone very close to me who's going through a very hard time in her life. Something that had happened to her a long time ago was coming back again, and just she has so many scars from it. It's called Time Heals. It goes, time heals all wounds. Time heals all scars. Time puts horrors behind bars. 10 years, memory's gone? Time heals, so stand up and be strong. What's past is dead and let the dead stay buried. And that's what they said, and you shouldn't be hurting. But I look into your eyes, looking glass into the soul, and I see you cry out, quit saying that I'm whole. Time heals your wounds, time heals your scars, and I hear you cry hard. You know you're not alone, but comfort that does not bring. None should have to go through such hellish things. I once heard a man in the living room TV talk about some of the horrors he'd seen. He looked at the cameraman with eyes full of pain. Whoever said time heals all wounds don't know what the hell they're saying. But I know where I stand and I support you and hold your hand. So, yeah. I don't know if you guys want to hear any more, but I have one more if you do. I don't know. Okay. So this one, kind of, I went through about a week-long anarchist phase. And then I kind of realized anarchy that's not my thing. Anyway, it's more of just, I don't know. So here goes. It goes, off with his head, says the king on a thimble. Another traitor felled by a hero in purple, now with some blue. The crowd chants, hero worship for the king. To protect us, I place guards in homes, houses, and streets. Take the bastard away, says the captain of the guard. His traitor's filth should be strung up in the yard. But the man had prior sat and pondered aloud, is this king worthy of the praises of the crowds? They take him to the stands. The rope awaits. A hood over his head, execute this enemy of the state. Let him hang, shouts the king on a thimble. Now the dissenter disabled by the judge in purple with pink. The crowd cheers, believing in their king. For your safety report the dissenters who say these things. Flyers go out, a guide to help spot. Conniving fiends who against the capital plot. This man's a schemer, he opposes the state. A man who dislikes the king brought to frenzy's gates. The next day brought out a corpse, a victim of hysteria. With witch hunts in full swing, fear and suspicion blankets the area. Let him to the lions, commands the king on the thimble. Another assassin is devoured by the monarch in purple, turned crimson. The crowd cheers, not too loudly to hear. To prevent anarchy's spread, I declare martial law, so don't fear. More guards are placed, more flyers go out. Any are arrested who dare to speak out. Our prisons are full, and our graveyards too. They take our families, the next one me or you. People hide in their homes, not daring to go out. for fear of accusation of being filled with doubt. Take away them all, demands the thing on the thimble. No longer a king, but a tyrant in purple and black. The people hear and come together. Something must be done. We cannot live in fear forever. This cloak of night blankets the city with murderous intent from a tyrant with no pity. Traitors and dissenters and bastards all, enemies, connivers, and fiends stand tall. Schemers, assassins, and victims stand tall. This system will fall before it devours us all.
Thank you for coming to Soul Food. Come back, read some more. One of my special talents, whether I've said a name once or 100 times, is shredding the name and mispronouncing it. So I'm probably going to do that now. Please correct me. Someone who enjoys watching the Colbert Report. Is it Carrie? Katie? Geisbart. Yay!
I've never done this before either, so. I take 6 white pills with a glass of water, no ice. And when I lived in that cloud of lithium, you would lie on the grass near the beach and tell me I looked like a fleet of pirate ships in the sky. But I let the wind blow that away, so fuck it. Let's get a real boat, because I cuss like a sailor, and you could always follow the stars home, and you were kind enough to say that my mess looked homey, even though you knew my home would always be roaming. And when my words turned to knives, you would stand with your back against the mast and an apple on your head, and when I asked if I could ask you a question, you'd say, shoot. But there is something in the stillness of your arms that makes me lay mine down, and I'm sorry I laughed the first time you kissed me, but I made up for that and you know it. And I know you're no boy to wash my troubles away, but I've heard you singing songs about crazy women in the shower, so let's just dance on the water until God looks at us funny. And when we fall from faith, I will light candles on the bow and pray I don't burn this down, and you will hang Christmas lights from the helm and sing Drunken Sailor like it was a hymn, because I needed salt in my holy water. And I needed to dive in, not just swallow. Thank you.
Thank you. Please do come back. Our next reader is Dawn Marie, and she likes to ride a motorcycle on twisty country roads, inhaling all the funky scents and fumes. And I'm going to say that again, but I want you to listen to the poetry in it. Just listen to the rhythm of it. Ride my motorcycle on twisty country roads, inhaling all the funky scents and fumes. It has a beautiful beat to it. So she can't help but drip poetry. Dawn Marie.
Why, thank you. This is not my first time here. In fact, I have actually read on a stage in Culver City, LA. And yeah, that was very interesting. All right. This is a work in progress. Write me a sonnet, she says. Write me a sonnet, the goddess says. Write me a sonnet, Aphrodite tells me. This is my task this year. Greek god, always full of tasks and labors. Write me a sonnet, she says, and so I think and think. But what kind of sonnet? Shakespearean, Spenserian, rhyming, modern. What do I do? Do I tell her I love her? Do I beg for love? But wait. If I go from the Jungian archetype state, I'm writing myself a love poem again. Thank you.
I wonder if I could put Marjorie Rommel on the spot. She has a bad foot and can't come up to the stage. So maybe she relaxes by resting her foot. I don't know, but I'd love for her to read a poem from where she sits. I don't think it'll reach. Will it reach? Not quite.
Oh my gosh, I don't believe it. Okay, I came tonight with a bunch of really old stuff because I was going to talk about them to Brendan, but since I got caught with them. The mastodon is part of a Russian plot to surprise Mother Elephant. Just think how surprised she'll be 22 months from now, indignity forgot in the long sway, the heave and hum. Just think how surprised come the birth of her ugly swan, mastodon 12 feet tall and hairy as its frozen father. Man desires to remake himself. His science calls Lazarus, Einstein, Beethoven, calls Lot on the mountain to his daughters and his wine, calls now even sperm of long-tusked, musky mastodon dug up with this dream intact. Ah, buttercup, blue sky, elephantine marvel of heated loins, hairless and wrinkled, the thought of you thaws me.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who hasn't signed up that might want to read? Okay, next up is Danny Stone, and his way of relaxing is listening to music right here at Soul Food, and that's a great way to relax. Danny Stone.
Evening. The first one I'll be reading is called Bleeding Colors. A sunset sky scarred with pastel scabs, to be picked off by the man in the moon, as he searches the shifting shadows and peers through the painted veil of illusion, captivating my spirit, releasing it, her, him. The veil of night lifted to see pastels with bright eyes. The forecast is clear skies. Thank you. This one is called Rainbows. Images everlasting, immortal in thought, brought to life by color palettes introduced by sun and rain, a window into that parallel universe that's everlasting. To speak of gold is mortal, never reachable. In the arrogance of money is power, in the ignorance is bliss, the blissful beginning and end, absorbed in the sun and the rain. Thank you.
Thank you, Danny. Next up, I think this person's been to the mic before. I don't know. Let's hear how he relaxes. Please welcome Michael Dillon Welch.
I don't think I relax. Well, I'll have to think about that one. Every few months, or every 6 months or so, I make a new poem sheet, and I thought I'd read a selection of haiku from this sheet. They're focused on, these are haiku focused mainly on Northwest plants and flowers, with an exception or two in case it's not native. There, you say, the arrowleaf groundsel at the edge of my boot. Douglas's spirea, newly planted, our gloved hands touch. Darwin's Barbary, the place where the skid marks stop. Shrubby cinquefoil, taking over the puppy's grave. Chinese Tupelo. For some reason, I think of flutes. Red chokeberry in the overpass shadow. Crumpled lotto ticket. Barren strawberry. She tells me now of her first marriage. The black elder shakes its shadow loose. Early snowfall. Roots of the river birch. A salmon's carcass, still a bit red. Two steps ahead of me, you set the western columbine to swaying. Evergold sedge. I forget which way we came on the trail. Thank you. Taylor is next. How do you relax, Taylor?
Hello, everybody, and thank you all for making this night such a wonderful night, too. And we'll be doing this again next Thursday, of course, as Mike has said. But to close out the night, I found this poem online, and it's a friendly poem, and I like friendly poems, so here we go. Be a friend. You don't need money, just the disposition, sonny. Just the wish to help another, get along some way or other. Just a kindly hand extended out to one who's unbefriended. Just the will to give or lend, this will make you someone's friend. Be a friend, you don't need glory. Friendship is a simple story. Pass by trifling errors blindly, gaze on honest efforts kindly. Cheer the youth who's bravely trying. Pity him who's sadly sighing. Just a little labor spend on the duties of a friend. Be a friend, the pay is bigger, though not written by a figure. Then is earned by people clever in what's merely self-endeavor. You'll have friends instead of neighbors for the profits of your labors. You'll be richer in the end than a prince if you're a friend. Thank you.
Well, that closes out another fabulous evening of Soul Food Poetry. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for your generous listening. Thank you for your poetry. I hope that you will find poetry wherever you go until we meet again. Remember to come back the third Thursday next month, which is July, I don't know. But for Deja Ledger and Tanya McDonald, who are two terrific poets, a special thanks to Anita K. Boyle and Belle Randall and Soul Food Books, of course, for hosting us in this terrific venue. Have a wonderful evening. Safe travels.